What's up, boxing fans? This is TBE Boxing, back at you again. Today's topic, the Ldbc, the Plantation Negro mentality, and the Willie Lynch syndrome among black fighters and fans. Let's chop it up and see what it's all about.
Got the money for minutes, pretty bitch, gotta show me titties. This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? This is the life that I chose, huh? On the block with the pole, huh? That life before riches, huh? That life before riches, huh? Pretty bitch, show me titties, huh? And I got the glaze, run up on me, I'ma make you get it. I'ma make you get it.
Okay, boxing fans, we got a lot to chop up today, and we're gonna chop it up. Okay, let's talk some boxing. All right, so there's a lot of things going on in boxing right now. As you may have known, maybe you don't know, Manny Pacquiao is no longer the WBA champion, super champion. He's currently, known as a champion in recess. Okay, the meaning that he was moved away from being the WBA super champion to a champion in recess, and now Yordenis Ugas is considered the super champion at welterweight for the WBA. And so it's kind of a compromise, between actually stripping Manny Pacquiao of the title and, elevating Ugas to the super champion status. So basically, they didn't outright strip Manny, they just put him in a category where he's like a champion in recess, meaning like he's like a champion on vacation, basically. Okay, and while he's champion on vacation, or not necessarily vacation, but more like a champion who's been laid off. Put it to you like that. And so in the meantime, in the interim, Ugas is now the champion, and if Manny wants his championship back, he has to fight Ugas to get it back. But he could come straight up, and fight Ugas and get the title. He doesn't have to go through any ranking system or whatever. He's basically number one contender in perpetuity. That's the word I'm looking for, perpetuity. Meaning that he's going to be considered number one contender over everybody else, and he could just come back and challenge Ugas for the title if he so decides to do that. Okay, so that's the state of the WBA 147-pound belt at the moment. Ugas is now the regular, the super champion. Congratulations to Ugas. I'm pretty sure that he's pretty happy about that, and him and his team. So congratulations to him. Now, this puts a lot of things into play in terms of what's going to happen from here forward. I mean, a lot of people, well, for one, I mean, before we even get to a lot of people, let's talk about Ugas. Ugas been wanting to fight Errol Spence for a long time, but he's been basically getting frozen out. Okay, didn't get the opportunity. He did fight Sean Porter, and some would say that he actually beat Sean Porter in that fight. I saw the fight. I thought that there's an argument to be made that he actually won that fight, but they gave the fight to Sean Porter. Okay, Sean Porter got decisions. I mean, you could argue that Sean Porter was a champion, so if in doubt, they go to the champion. But as far as I can see in that fight, Ugas was the most aggressive guy, and he was the more aggressive fighter in there. Sean Porter is basically fighting on the back foot, which he doesn't normally do. And for some reason, he decided to use a different strategy against Ugas. Now we could talk about that, but that's not what this video is about. I'll probably do a separate video about how that fight actually played out. But suffice to say that now Ugas is in a position to where he can do a unification bout with either Terence Crawford or Errol Spence. Now, a lot of the Ldbc fanboys, out there, are jumping for joy. You know what I'm saying? These guys are jumping for joy, you know what I mean? These Ldbc Errol Spence Protection Brigade and fanboys, they out there jumping for joy because they see this situation with Ugas as an opportunity for Errol Spence to get the one up, you know, on Terence Crawford. Basically, they see this as like a way for, you know, for now Errol Spence can collect 3 belts, and you know when you go into the I mean, they even say that. So I'm not. This is not new. That's what they're actually saying out of their mouth, that Errol Spence can now get the opportunity, you know, to now he can get the 3rd belt, and when he go into negotiations with Terence Crawford, Terence Crawford will be, you know, even in a worse position than he was now when Errol Spence is demanding 60-40. You see, so this is how these guys think. Okay, this is the mentality vis-a-vis Terence Crawford. For some reason, I don't know why these guys hate Terence Crawford so much, but you know, there's a real hate out there for Terence Crawford. But again, you know, we gotta understand, you know, what this is all about, because you see the title of this video, okay? The Ldbc, the Plantation Negro mentality, and the Willie Lynch syndrome among black fighters and fans, and you know, commentators come under fans, okay? So this is really, you know, the Willie Lynch syndrome and the Negro mentality, you know, the Plantation Negro mentality playing itself out among these commentators when it comes to Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, okay? This is what it's all about, okay? And, you know, we're going to see how it's going to play out, you know, in the next couple of months, but we already saw how it played out in the past couple of months, the way these guys, you know, have been making all kind of excuses why, you know, the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight can't happen, that Errol Spence gets 60-40 or 70-30 or whatever. And, you know, Errol Spence basically has been, you know, negotiating in the media when the fight was first, you know, when people start talking about the fight, people start actually demanding the fight, and, you know, Errol Spence couldn't, you know, duck anymore. He basically came out and said, oh, he wants 60-40. He started negotiating in the media. Okay, Errol Spence came out and said that. Crawford didn't come out with that. Now that Ugas is a champion, all these fanboys and, you know, Errol Spence Protection Brigade out there, you know, they, like I said, they're jumping for joy because they see this as another opportunity for Errol Spence to get a one-up on Terence Crawford, which is what they want. Okay, because basically they don't think that Ugas has any chance whatsoever of beating Errol Spence. I mean, they're basically saying that, you know, they even come out and saying that you know, they think that Errol Spence is going to beat Ugas, and so now, you know, so basically they're not giving Ugas any chance, you know, and this is why they want to fight with Ugas and Errol Spence. Okay, they don't mind the fight happening between Ugas and Errol Spence because they realize, or they think, that Ugas has no chance against Errol Spence. So yeah, let's make that fight happen right now. You know, that now Errol Spence can get a 3rd belt. Errol Spence could have gotten a 3rd belt 2 years ago if he would have fought Crawford. I mean, after he fought Sean Porter. But nobody wasn't pushing for Errol Spence to fight. I shouldn't say nobody. These Ldbc fanboys and their Negro mentality, they weren't pushing for this fight between Crawford and Spence. They were putting roadblocks in the way of the fight, making up excuses, business this, A-side that, 70-30 this, okay? All kind of reasons why the fight should happen. But all of a sudden, now that Ugas has the belt and they think that Spence can beat Ugas, they're ready for that fight. But they wasn't never ready for the Errol Spence Terence Crawford fight. And even Spence already tweeted Ugas, and he's talking about, you know, well, we need to fight now that you have something that I want. Let's make this happen. Well, wait a minute. The last time I checked, Terence Crawford had a belt. Isn't that something that Spence wants? Oh, but wait a minute. It wouldn't be so easy to beat Crawford, so he doesn't want that belt. Okay? He wants the WBA belt from Ugas because he figures that he can beat Ugas. Because Ugas already lost to Sean Porter. You know, we just talked about that, even though some people thought he won. And, you know, Spence is thinking that he can beat Ugas. Okay? So he has no problem fighting. He's ready to fight Ugas right now. He's even reached out to Ugas already. No talk about 60-40, 70-30 with Ugas. Okay? No negotiating the media. Okay? no, excuses, no, whatever other reasons he come up with why he couldn't fight Crawford. No A side, none of that. He's ready to fight right now. Not talking about 60-40 or 70-30. Okay, why is that? Well, obviously, he actually wants to fight with Ugas. And so you see, when someone actually wants a fight, the fight will happen. When they don't want to fight, we hear excuses. Okay, so we know that he didn't actually want to fight with Crawford. He doesn't want to fight with Crawford. And a lot of people think because, he's going to fight Ugas for the title, and if he actually wins against Ugas and he has 3 belts, that's going to make the Terence Crawford fight closer. No way. It's not going to happen. That's going to make the Terence Crawford fight even further away, because now what he's going to do, Errol Spence is going to claim that he has all the belts, he's undisputed, and that the WBO belt don't really matter. That's what's going to happen. Okay? And if you don't believe me, his trainer, Derek James, came on, one of these shows and said that they want to collect the 3 belts. I played that video. As a matter of fact, if you check my last video, okay, that I just put up recently, you'll see that I played the tape of that where he's talking about the 3 belts. He's not talking about the 4 belts. He's not talking about Crawford's belt. Okay, he's just talking about the 3 belts. So they just want to collect the 3 belts. They don't want to collect Crawford's belt, because again, if he wanted to collect the belt from Crawford, he could have got that belt, almost two years now since he beat Sean Porter, but he never made no move towards Terence Crawford's belt. Instead, he's putting up roadblocks, him and his trainer, Derek James, about why the fight shouldn't happen. It's not in his legacy, this, that, and the other. But right away, you see, Ugas don't even have the title for an hour, and he's already calling and tweeting to Ugas to let's make this fight happen. But the same thing couldn't happen with Crawford. Okay, and his legion of fanboys out there, all of them are jumping for joy right now. Why is that? Because they think that he's going to beat Ugas. It's a fight that they think he can actually win, and so they're all for it. Okay, they have no problem with that fight. Okay, and that's, it is what it is. Okay, so we see how, the hypocrisy actually works. Okay, for some reason, like I said, these guys, Blue Blood Sports is over there jumping for joy. He's talking about, oh yes, now we're gonna. What does it mean for Terence Crawford? Now, if he thought it was bad before, what he's gonna do now? I mean, this guy is practically coming on himself over there. It's hilarious, man, when you think about it. These guys are jokers. Talk about, plantation Negro mentality. And the Willie Lynch syndrome. These guys are always making, I was talking about, American fighters versus English fighters versus, we gotta, promote the American fighters, and we gotta root for the American fighter. I don't really play that fighter, because they always talk about that in reference to Joshua and Deontay Wilder. Okay, they root for Deontay Wilder because he's the American fighter, right? Okay, and Joshua is from Britain. Okay, but I don't play those American fighter, British fighter, European fighter game. I'm not with that. A fighter is a fighter, and I don't care where he's from. If I'm rolling with a fighter, or I think about I look at the fighter's record, see how he's doing. I look at the whole picture. I don't really, it doesn't really matter to me what country the fighter actually comes from. Okay, but they make a big deal out of this. Okay, they make a big deal about supporting the American fighter. Well, last time I checked, Ugas is from Cuba. Okay. And all these guys are now supporting the fight between Ugas and Spence over the fight between Crawford and Spence, even though Crawford and Spence are both American fighters. Okay. Now, this just again goes to show the hypocrisy of these guys and this whole, plantation mentality that they have. The fight between Ugas and Spence, even though it's going to be a unification fight, and the one with Crawford is also a unification fight, but the bigger fight is between Crawford and Spence, not the one with Ugas and Spence. That's not going to be a big. I mean, Ugas and Spence. That's not going to be a big pay-per-view fight. That's not going to make any big pay-per-view money. Okay, it's not gonna. That fight is not as much money as the Crawford fight. That's the fight that people want to see. Okay, most people think that Spence is gonna beat Ugas. You know, so they're not really looking to that fight as some kind of test for Spence or anything. They actually believe that he's gonna win. I mean, I'm not that sure of that. I'm not convinced necessarily that Spence is gonna beat Ugas. We're gonna have to see how the fight plays out. Okay. And I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Spence is going to beat Ugas. A lot of these guys seem to think that, okay? But I'm not that convinced of that, okay? And I'll tell you about that in a minute. So instead of promoting the fight with Spence and Crawford, you know, two American fighters, you know, and these guys always talk about American fighter. Now they promote the fight between Ugas and Spence, a Cuban fighter and an American fighter, over the other American fighter who's Crawford. Okay, again, the hate for Crawford among these Ldbc guys, you know, the BFTBs and the Phantom Boxing and the Blue Blood Sports and the Champ Sides and all these guys. I mean, there's a legion of them. I'm not going to keep naming names for the next 10 minutes. Okay, they all, for the past couple of years, been, you know, riding with Spence against Crawford and basically doing everything in their power to put roadblocks in the way of these two guys making money, because really that's what it's really about. It's about the money, because a fight between Crawford and Spence is big money for both guys. But these people don't really understand that. Okay, for some reason, you know, all they're doing is, it's like emotion, and it's an emotional thing with them. Okay, anything to get the one up on Crawford, anything to put Crawford in a bad light, anything to make Crawford, you know, not make the fight happen. Okay, basically that's what's been going on. Okay, so I mean, when you look at it, they're really putting roadblocks in front of Spence as well as Crawford, not just Crawford, because Crawford is not making that money. I mean, Spence is not making that money. He could be making, you know, in a big fight against Crawford. Instead of these two American fighters, two American black fighters get together, okay, I'm making the fight like Crawford is trying to do. Spence don't want no part of it, okay? And you got to ask yourself, well, why is that? Why does Spence want to make this fight when it's going to be his biggest money fight in his entire career? Why wouldn't he want that fight? Okay, and I mean, and the only reason that we can think of is that he doesn't think he can win. Okay, and he would not make that money, okay, and hold on to the title than to make the money and probably lose the title. But you see that he have no problem with making a fight with Ugas, because he actually believes he's going to beat Ugas. Okay, so, you know, this is what it's all about. So when we heard all this talk about, you know, A side, B side, 70-40, you know, 60-40, 70-30, you know, business moves, you know, pay-per-views, you know, what is Crawford done to deserve a fight with Spence? He needs to fight Sean Porter for all this talk that we've been hearing. And now you realize it's all bullshit. Okay? Because what is who has Ugas fought to deserve a fight with Spence, if you want to look at it like that? As opposed to who Crawford has fought. What's Ugas' record compared to Crawford's record? About, you know, who he's fighting, you know, top fighters as they claim. And I mean, so we see all that talk was just nonsense. Okay? Because at the end of the day, Crawford has a strap just like Ugas now got a strap. The only difference is that Crawford actually won his strap in the ring and Ugas got his strap, you know, on paper. Okay? He didn't really fight nobody for that strap. Now, in his, you know, in Ugas' favor, he has said that he has, you know, basically directed his people to give Manny Pacquiao the first opportunity to make the fight if he decides he wants to do that. So he's basically saying that he will fight Manny Pacquiao before everybody else if Manny Pacquiao, you know, wants a shot at the title, okay? Which is, you know, a no-brainer, because that's where he'd make the most money. He'd make more money with Manny Pacquiao than he's going to make with Errol Spence. So that's a smart move from his perspective to offer Manny Pacquiao a chance to win a title back because yeah, I mean, you know, that's a big money fight, obviously. Okay, and so he's gonna make more money fighting Manny Pacquiao than he would make fighting Errol Spence or Terence Crawford. Okay, and you know that's why everybody was chasing the Manny Pacquiao fight. You know, Crawford and Spence and Mikey Garcia. Okay, because he's the cash cow. Okay, when you fight Manny Pacquiao, you're looking at more than a million pay-per-views. Okay, now, like I said before, it's not going to be in the pay-per-view fight. There's no big money pay-per-view fight between Spence and Yordenis Ugas. Okay, that's for sure. We all know that. Yordenis is, you know, a pretty good fighter, but he's not that well known. Okay, he doesn't, you know, he has even less pay-per-view stardom than Terence Crawford, as they would say. Okay, so as Errol Spence like to say, he would have to do the heavy lifting, and he wouldn't be able to lift up him and Ugas to make any pay-per-view numbers because, as we already know, Errol Spence doesn't really do that, you know, that many pay-per-view numbers, despite what these fanboys are talking about. He's doing all the heavy lifting. At the end of the day, his last fight with, you know, even though these guys are pushing up numbers about 300 pay-per-views, you know, with Danny Garcia, there's no truth to that whatsoever. Tell him to show you the receipts. I show you the receipts in the videos I've done about the pay-per-view. And in the Danny Garcia fight with Spence, it was I don't think that fight did 250 pay-per-views. Regardless of what these guys out there talking about 300, 320 pay-per-views, 310 pay-per-views and all this talk. It's just talk. Okay? So Spence would be doing the heavy lifting if that fight was to go to pay-per-view. And and like I said, Spence numbers in pay-per-view has been going down steadily ever since the Mikey Garcia fight. The Mikey Garcia fight was the highest number of pay-per-views he did, around 300, 350. Then Sean Porter, it was about 200 and something, maybe close to 300. Then the Danny Garcia was even less. And the reason for that is simply because the person that brought more fans to the table in terms of pay-per-view was Mikey Garcia, the Mexican fans. You know, they're always dependable when it comes to pay-per-view. They're going to support their fighter. And so those fighters, you know, those fans came to the table. They came with Mikey Garcia, and this is why the fight did so well in the pay-per-view. It wasn't necessarily because of Spence. We saw, and the reason, and we can see that because in the next pay-per-view fight, he did even less. And then with Danny Garcia, he did even less again. So, you know, those are the facts, okay? So Spence will have to do the heavy lifting in a fight with Ugas. And, you know, Ugas is even less known than Porter, Danny Garcia, or Mikey Garcia. So that would be a lot of lifting. So that's not gonna, there probably won't be a pay-per-view fight unless they give it time to build it up. And from what we're hearing, this fight is probably gonna be on the fast track. So it's not gonna be enough time to promote and build it up to the point where, you know, they couldn't get a decent pay-per-view. So this fight is probably gonna be free. Okay. But again, you know, you don't hear no talk about Spence doing the heavy lifting. You don't hear no talk about 60-40 or any kind of negotiating in the media with Spence about this fight with Ugas. He just wants to get the fight up and running, okay, you know, because again, he thinks he can win that fight, so he's ready to fight. But he wasn't ready to fight Crawford, and it's been 3 years now that Crawford been chasing him, okay? And he's been ducking Crawford for 3 years. So we're going to see how this fight plays out, if it actually happens between Ugas, you know, because for all we know, Ugas could end up fighting Crawford for unification. I mean, that's a possibility. It's not like, you know, it's a total impossibility for that to happen, but we'll see how what happens. Okay. You know, and, you know, like again, like I said, you know, there's no foregone conclusion that Errol Spence is actually going to beat Ugas from my perspective. A lot of these fanboys out there, these, you know, these Ldbc, you know, Plantation Negros and the Willie Lynch, you know, and these guys suffering from the Willie Lynch syndrome. Okay, you know, and by the way, for all you people that don't know who Willie Lynch is, you know, you need to look it up, you know, Google it, whatever, or find out what it's all about, you know, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Okay, I don't want to go into a big explanation about that. But like I said, all these, you know, fanboys out there, you know, Spence Protection Brigaders, they're thinking that this is going to be a walk in the park for Errol Spence, and that he's a foregone conclusion that he's going to beat Ugas. But I'm not that convinced of that. I mean, I would give him the edge, but I'm not necessarily convinced that he can actually beat Ugas, or he's going to beat Ugas. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm just saying that it's not a foregone conclusion. I don't think, not like what these guys are thinking. Okay, I mean, we saw the fight with Ugas and Sean Porter, and if you analyze that fight between Ugas and Sean Porter, and you analyze the fight between Spence and Sean Porter, and Spence and Danny Garcia, but let's just stick with the Spence, and Sean Porter and Spence, Spence and Sean Porter and Sean Porter and Ugas. We saw that in the fight between Spence and Sean Porter, that Sean Porter took the fight to Spence. He stayed in the pocket with Spence the whole fight. Okay, traded blows with Spence. They were both in there trading blows, punch for punch, basically. Okay, and it was the toughest fight of Spence's career. Now, the fight with Ugas and Sean Porter wasn't the toughest fight of Ugas's career. As far as I can see, he had an easier time fighting, even though he lost, and I think he should have won, really. He lost that decision. If you were to compare both fights, you'd see that Ugas handled Crawford better than Spence did. Now, granted, that's, Porter fought a different strategy against Spence than he did against Ugas. In the Ugas fight, Porter stayed on the back foot for most of that fight. Boxing, staying at range, okay, coming in, every once in a while to mix it up, but staying on the outside mostly. With Spence, he fought Spence on the inside mostly, okay. And you have to ask yourself, why was that? Well, by looking at the Spence, fight against Porter and the Ugas fight against Porter, I'm thinking that Ugas is a very strong fighter, and Sean Porter respected his strength and his skill, actually. Okay. Now Ugas is not known as a big puncher, but really, at the end of the day, neither is Spence. Okay. So, he hasn't knocked anybody out in a while. So he's not necessarily a big puncher. He can punch against guys who are, way below his category, but when it comes to people close to his category, it's a different ball game. So we saw that, Sean Porter fought Ugas on the outside, and Ugas showed a lot of strength in that fight. Okay, if not necessarily power. And I thought he clipped Sean Porter a couple of times and probably hurt him a couple of times in that fight, even though he's not necessarily a big puncher. But he has some skills. Okay, the thing about him, he's a big welterweight, he's about almost the same size as Errol Spence. So I think he's probably, if not as strong, is almost as strong as Errol Spence. They're probably about the same, or he might even be stronger than Errol Spence. I'm not sure which guy got the bigger punch, but we'll find out. Who can take the bigger punch is the next thing. I'm not sure about that either. But I saw Ugas fight, Thomas Delorme, and for those of you who don't know, Thomas Delorme was the guy that fought Terence Crawford and got knocked out in the 6th round against Crawford. But he went the distance against Ugas in a tough fight. Okay, as a matter of fact, in that fight against Thomas Delorme and Ugas, Ugas was winning the early round because he knocked Delorme down twice. But then in the later rounds, Thomas Delorme started coming back and was, giving him a hard way to go, and probably hurt him in that fight as well. So, to compare with Crawford and Ugas, common opponent in Thomas Delorme, we see that Crawford knocked out the opponent, and Ugas went the distance with the opponent in a tough fight. Okay, so we can see the different, they say style make fights, but Ugas' style of fighting and Crawford's style of fighting is not really that much different. The only difference really is that, Crawford is a lot slicker. He can switch to both sides, and he has more power than Ugas. Okay, and he's a slicker fighter. Okay, so but their style is almost similar. Okay, so we're going to see how Errol Spence do against a guy who is similar to Crawford, but doesn't have as much talent as Crawford. Okay, so it should be an interesting fight if it actually happens. And like I said, it is in the realm of possibility that Ugas could end up fighting Crawford before he actually fights Errol Spence. Okay, it's not impossible for that to happen, but we'll see how it plays out. You know, so again, like I said, you know, now you might wonder, why do I have a picture of you know, CARNE-LO and Yildirim up there? Okay, you know, that, you know, they're the biggest picture up there. And the reason I have those guys up there is because this all relates to the whole Ldbc, the Plantation Negro mentality, and the Willie Lynch syndrome among black fighters and fans. Okay, now CARNE-LO is getting ready to fight Yildirim, and a lot of people out there talking about, oh, why is he fighting Yildirim? He should be fighting this guy or that guy. You know, Yildirim is a bum, and why is he fighting? Well, the reason why he's fighting Yildirim, for you guys, you know, with the Willie Lynch syndrome that don't really understand about dollars and cents, it's about the money. Okay, and Yildirim is his sparring partner. Been his sparring partner since like almost 3 years now. They're friends at this point, and he's given his friend an opportunity to make a big payday. That's what it's really about. Okay, CARNE-LO is giving Yildirim an opportunity to make a big payday. That's why he's fighting Yildirim. Simple as that. Okay, he went and demanded that fight from WBC. They didn't mandate that fight because it came out that it was CARNE-LO that asked for that fight. And why would he ask for a fight against a guy like Yildirim? Why? Because he's trying to duck some other guy, or he's trying to duck this guy? No, he's not trying to duck anybody necessarily. I mean, I'm not saying he hasn't ducked anybody, you know, in the past. We don't, you know, that's not really what this is about. But the reason he requested that fight is simply because he wants to make a payday for Yildirim. Now, is he taking a chance against Yildirim? Well, anything could happen. I mean, but, you know, nobody thinks that Yildirim is going to beat CARNE-LO, but anything could happen. So he's actually taking a chance. Okay, but the point is, CARNE-LO is doing the fight. He went and demanded the fight. Okay, he requested a fight, and him and Yildirim probably came to some agreement, and they're going to fight so that Yildirim can make a payday. Okay, because Yildirim has been making many big paydays in boxing since he's been out there fighting. So CARNE-LO is going to give him a big payday. And that's what you do when you understand how the business works, and, you know, what you can do and the leverage that you can have in this. You know, the same thing should be happening with Crawford and Spence. These guys should be getting together and, you know, making moves and saying, okay, yeah, let's make this, you know, and let's do this fight, and we can, you know, make this and we can make that. But no, okay, it's not happening among black fighters like that. Okay, same thing with Crawford and Porter. Same thing with Thurman and Crawford. These guys should be making these moves together and, you know, fighting each other so that all of them can make money. But they're not doing that. You know, I mean, you know, but that's what CARNE-LO is doing. I mean, CARNE-LO is having like 3 fights in the last couple of months now. It's going to be 3 fights. He's going to fight Yildirim. He just fought what's the guy name he just fought? McCullum, Smith, you know. So now he's gonna fight another fight coming up after he fights Yildirim. So he's basically in less than a year, a couple of months, he's having like in 6 months he's having like 3 different fights, and we already know that he's making like $20 million, $15 million to $20 million per fight. Okay, so that's like $60 million in less than a year. Okay, so you see how that works. And you have Errol Spence and Terence Crawford there not fighting each other. Sean Porter not fighting Terence Crawford. Talking about low ball and this and that, because these guys, you know, these black fighters are not, you know, they got this mentality, this, you know, plantation mentality, this Willie Lynch syndrome among the fighters and the fans. And so these fights are not getting made because people picking sides and talking about, you know, A side and B side and talking about this guy should do this and this guy should do that, instead of these guys fighting amongst themselves and making money amongst themselves, like how Yildirim and CARNE-LO is doing. He said, this is what it's all about. Okay, and this is why, you know, I'm giving the title of this video, the Ldbc, the Plantation Negro mentality and the Willie Lynch syndrome among black fighters and fans, because that's what's going on. Okay, they infighting amongst themselves and trying to get one up here and one up there, and you know, but it is what it is, man. And you know, at the end of the day, you know, we either gonna have to adjust to what's going on, or we're gonna suffer the consequences. Okay, and just that simple. You know, it is what it is. You know, slavery been over for like so many years, and still we, you know, a lot of us are still thinking like slaves. You know what I'm saying? You know, so it is what it is. I mean, you know, so let's see what's gonna happen with this fight with Ugas, if it actually comes off. If Spence is gonna fight Ugas, if you know, now let's just imagine if Spence was to fight Ugas and then lose. What would that be? What would happen? Can you imagine that? That Spence, you know, ducked Crawford for the biggest fight of his career for 3 years, okay, and then rushed to go fight Ugas and then loses against Ugas. And now Ugas would be in position to fight Terence Crawford for the biggest fight in boxing. And I'm sure Ugas is not going to have any problem fighting Crawford. Okay? Just imagine if that was to happen. That would be an ironic situation, to say the least. Okay? But, you know, we'll see how it plays out. Okay? We're definitely going to see it. You know, like I said, you know, all these fanboys out there thinking that Errol Spence, you know, is an automatic, you know, to beat Ugas. I'm not that convinced of that. Okay? That's not necessarily a foregone conclusion from my perspective. Okay? Ugas does have a shot. I mean, I think he's a better fighter against Spence than Danny Garcia was. I think he's going to be a better fighter against Spence than Sean Porter was. Okay? So, I think he's going to be a more competitive fight. Okay? In terms of, you know, the Danny Garcia and Errol Spence fight, then, you know, so we'll see how it plays out. I mean, it's going to be an interesting situation, you know. So again, I don't really think that, because I mean, if Errol Spence, let's just say Errol Spence win the fight against Ugas, people think that the fight with Spence is going to be the fight with Crawford is going to be next automatically. I don't think so either. That's not going to happen. I don't think that Errol Spence really wants to fight Crawford under any circumstances. Okay, and I think if anything, a win against Ugas will make the Crawford fight further away than closer, as the Spence fanboys are out there talking about. The fight will be closer. The fight moves a little bit closer because Ugas might become super champ. Well, now Ugas is super champ, and let's see after him and Spence fight, if they fight first, if the Crawford fight is going to be any closer. Because these same fanboys, once Spence beat Ugas, if he does beat Ugas, they're going to come up with their same reasons. Now they're going to say, oh, Spence, Crawford should take, it should be 90-10 or 80-20 in Spence's favor. Okay? That Negro mentality, that plantation mentality is going to be right back up here there again, like it is now. Okay, you know, they're going to be out there talking foolishness like they always, that they've been talking, and putting roadblocks in front of the biggest money fight in boxing for Errol Spence and Terence Crawford, 2 American fighters. But you know, again, like I said, it is what it is. Okay, at the end of the day, you know. These fighters, you know, they need to fight each other to make money. And, you know, when you have the biggest fight in boxing as the Terence Crawford, Errol Spence fight, those guys should have fought a year ago at the least. Okay? They could have had this fight 2 years ago. Biggest fight in boxing, but it's nowhere closer to happening than it was 2 or 3 years ago. Okay. In the meantime, so now he's gonna fight Ugas. He's not gonna make any big money in the Ugas fight, even though it's a chance to win the title. I mean, at the end of the day, he could end up losing his two titles, trying to get another title from Ugas in a lower money fight, when he could have had a big money fight and still had still a chance to lose his title, but he was making more money. Okay. But we'll see, he would have made more money with the Terence Crawford fight, even if he had lost his title. But he could end up losing his title to Ugas and make less money than he would have made against Crawford. And then Ugas would be in a position to get the fight with Crawford and make the big bucks. Okay, so that could very well happen. I mean, I'm not saying that I want that to happen, but that's a possibility. Okay, so but let's see how it played out. In the meantime, the Canelo is making his money. He's doing his thing. He's fighting. He's actually making moves on his terms. Okay, I don't know if you guys remember when what Canelo is doing is the kind of thing that we saw Floyd Mayweather did when he fought his last fight. He fought that kid from Haiti. Can't remember his name now. That same guy also fought Sean Porter and lost. But he fought, and everybody was saying, why is he fighting this guy? He should be fighting that guy and that guy. He should be fighting, a tough opponent. But actually, that fight turned to be a very good fight. But the bottom line was, the reason why Mayweather did that was to give that guy a payday. Okay, that was a friend of his, so he gave him a big payday in the last fight of his career. So that was the same type of thing Canelo is doing now with Yildirim, giving him a payday. And that's what you do when you have friends, and you have your fellow fighters out there. You make sure they get a payday if you can. Okay, that's what it's all about. Okay. Errol Spence and Crawford should be making sure they get a payday. Okay, the biggest fight in boxing, they should be getting together and making sure that fight happened making sure under all circumstances that fight happened, because it's the biggest fight for both of them, and they should be looking at ways to make the fight even bigger. Okay, but we all know that Errol Spence don't want to fight, and his fans don't want to fight either. Okay, because they think Errol Spence is going to lose to Crawford, and they got some kind of hate for Crawford for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. Okay, the important thing is that these guys make their money from the fight, win or lose. Okay, and that they're secure financially in the long run. Okay, and that fight could get that type of security for both of these guys. But for some reason, these fans don't want to see that. They don't want to see these guys make the money that they're supposed to make. So I just don't understand that. I guess I'll never understand it. But it is what it is. So, we're gonna see how everything plays out. Okay. I'm gonna keep an eye on what's going on. I'm not gonna go on much longer than what I've been going on, for this video. I'm gonna leave it here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Okay. Like and subscribe. Okay. So you can get more, good commentary on what's going on, in boxing at this moment. This is TBE Boxing. That's all I have. I'm going to leave it there, and I'm out.